Dear Mr. Director of the Museum of the Second World War, honorary guests, ladies and gentlemen, participants in this conference, on behalf of my director, Associated Professor Sonia Penkova, and on my behalf as well, I would like to express our gratitude to the organizers for inviting us to this wonderful forum. And I would like to begin my presentation with just a few words about our museum. The National Museum of Military History is specialized in thematic scope and national in the territorial scope of its activities state museum, which since its establishment is a structure of the Ministry of Defense. Established back in 1916, nowadays it is a structure of 4 museums, the museum in Sofia, which you may see now, and its 3 branches, the Naval Museum in Varna, the Park Museum of Military Friendship, 1444, again in Varna, and the Aviation Museum near the city of Plovdiv. Being the National Museum of Bulgaria dealing with the military history, it is our duty to preserve the memory of all the conflicts, battles, and fights that happened in our past. And through the ages, Bulgaria has witnessed lots of them. Since the very establishment of the Bulgarian state in 681, Bulgaria was forced to defend its territory and newborn identity by the means of regular fights. The entire medieval history of the Bulgarian state was dominated by its conflicts with Byzantium, the Crusaders, and the invaders from the north. Yet another invader, the Ottomans, led to the almost 5 centuries period during which the Bulgarian state and its armed forces ceased to exist. The Bulgarian national identity, and I say national having in mind the fact that this term is probably not appropriate for the period that is so back in time, but the Bulgarian identity was not erased. The medieval battles were replaced by different forms of resistance of the Bulgarians against the Ottoman authorities. Riots, plots, rebels detachments, and uprisings, all of which were unsuccessful. It was the 12th in number Russo-Turkish War that was waged in the period 1877-1878 and resulted in the final liberation of the Bulgarian lands. That happened after a series of fierce battles between the Russians, the numerous Bulgarian volunteers, and the Ottoman army. After the war, however, Bulgaria was only partially liberated. There were abundant territories populated by Bulgarians who left under different forms of foreign government. Constantly driven by the impulse to unite all the Bulgarians under its government, Bulgaria found itself consecutively caught in 5 wars in the period 1885-1945. The Serbo-Bulgarian War, the First Balkan War, the Second Balkan War, the First World War, and the Second World War. Through the centuries, hundreds of thousands of Bulgarians have lost their lives on the battlefields fighting for a free, independent, and unified Bulgaria. Happily, nowadays this past is only on the pages of our school books. The remnant battlefields, however, tell us the story of these turbulent pages of Bulgarian history. And I would like to tell you more about 3 of these battlefields that cover a period of almost 5 centuries and will transfer you, as Hannah said, to some very different stages in Bulgarian history. First, the period of the Ottoman conquest of the Balkan Peninsula, then the Russo-Turkish War that liberated the Bulgarian state, and the Great War as it was waged by Bulgaria with a strife for national unification. The first of them is the Battle of Varna of 1444. Soon after the fall of Bulgaria under Ottoman domination in 1396, the Ottomans headed to Hungary, which was forced to find a way of defense. Understanding the fact that it was impossible to withstand alone against the power of the empire, Hungary assembled a coalition with the idea not only to stop, but to push back the conquerors from the Balkans. Headed by the Polish-Hungarian king Władysław III Jagiello, this mixed army that constituted of Hungarian Transylvanian regiments, about 300 Polish volunteers, 400 Czech Hussites, of which we heard yesterday, 4,000 Wachians, Rutens, detachment of Croatians, Saxons, Lithuanians, German settlers from the Transylvania region, as well as Slovaks, detachment of Knight Crusaders of the Roman Pope Eugene IV, and also Bulgarian volunteers from the Sub-Danube region. They all took part in this battle that remained in Bulgarian history under the title The Battle of Nations, due to the numerous nationalities involved in it. It was on November 10, 1444, near the city of Varna, when the 60,000 people strong Ottoman army led by Sultan Murad II approached the European Christian coalition that numbered approximately 20,000 men. The two armies faced on a front line of about 3.5 kilometers long. King Władysław perished in the midst of the battle when he led his personal guard of 500 knights against the emissaries of the Ottoman Sultan in attempt to capture him. Breaching the last lines of the emissaries, the king was murdered and beheaded on the spot, and neither his head nor his body could be saved during the remainder of the battle. The death of the king disorganized the Christian army and led to its retreat. You have to understand that for the Balkan Peninsula, this Battle of Varna was the last, the crucial one. After it, the Balkans and Southeastern Europe, in fact, fell for centuries forward under Ottoman domination. The defeat of the Christian coalition marked also the failure of the last essential opportunity for the Bulgarians to regain their freedom. The memory for the bravery, the sacrifice, and the tragic end of this last Christian crusade, and King Władysław himself, however, was never forgotten. Even during the period of the Ottoman domination, the Bulgarians used to place wooden crosses in the center of the battlefield, the very place where King Władysław has perished. It was several decades after the liberation, however, in 1924, when the first modest monument with the inscription that you see on the screen was placed in order to mark and commemorate the battlefield. 11 years later, in 1935, a park environment was organized on an area of 30 acres of land, stretching on the very battlefield, and in one of the 4th century BC Thracian mounds that was found on the territory of the park, a symbolic mausoleum of King Władysław Warneczyk was built. A stone replica of the bronze original of the sarcophagus of King Władysław from Wawel Castle in Krakow was placed inside the building. The sarcophagus was empty, since neither the head nor the body of the king were retrieved after the battle. The erection of this mausoleum was initiated by a public committee with the idea, and I quote, "This mausoleum to be visited by Turks, Poles, Czechs, Bulgarians, and Romanians. Thus, the former enemies on the battlefield will have the opportunity to reach a friendly hand to a peaceful future life." The committee engaged a great number of foreign countries in the preparation and in the opening ceremony of the mausoleum. Of course, predominantly Poland, but also Hungary, the Vatican, Czech Republic, Turkey, and Romania. We may say that this involvement of other countries is still unprecedented in the history of museums and memorials in Bulgaria. After the implementation of the project, the public committee was dismissed and the mausoleum was handed over to the Ministry of War. 30 years later, in 1964, in honor of the 520th anniversary of the Battle of Varna, a monument of János Hunyadi, the commander-in-chief of King Władysław's army, and an entire memorial complex were inaugurated under the title Park Museum of Military Friendship 1444. The museum exhibition was created on the basis of documentary materials about the Battle of Varna and included weapons found on the battlefield and copies of objects donated by military museums and some private donors from Warsaw, Budapest, Prague, Bucharest, Belgrade, and Istanbul. Medieval coats of arms, flags, paintings and sculptures, knights' armors and swords, chainmails and maces, they all presented this dark and glorious epoch of the Battle of Varna. In 1968, with the decree of the Council of Ministers of the National Republic of Bulgaria, the Park Museum Władysław Warneczyk became a branch of the Military Museum, which on its hand was given the status of a national institution. The complex is still part of the family of the National Museum of Military History and is annually visited by tens of thousands of Bulgarians, but also Poles, Czechs, Romanians, Hungarians, as a major place of not only national, but also European remembrance. When we speak of battlefields as places of national remembrance, however, the first association of each Bulgarian would probably be the peak of Shipka, or St. Nicholas Peak, as it was known back then. The defense of Shipka was one of the most heroic and decisive battles during the Russo-Turkish War of 1877-1878, and a place where the Bulgarians who volunteered to take part in the war managed to prove their strong identity and will to have a Bulgarian national state. The fights that took place from August 21st to August 26th, 1877, between the past defenders and the Ottoman army, remained in Bulgarian history as the Shipka epopee. The task of the small number Russian-Bulgarian detachment under the command of General Stuletov, about 7,500 people strong, was to prevent the army of Suleiman Pasha, approximately 27,000 people and a reserve of 10,000 more, to cross the Balkan Mountains and to join forces with the Ottoman units in northeastern Bulgaria that were besieging the city of Pleven. The Russian soldiers and the Bulgarian volunteers turned the pass into a fortified stronghold, and to quote the word of a Russian general, General Radetzky, with the sacrifice of many lives, they managed to close the door before the Ottoman advance towards northern Bulgaria and to open it for the victorious march of the Russian army to Tsarigrad or Istanbul. Nowadays, the battlefield is transformed into a memorial complex, the National Park Museum Shipka. It includes 26 monuments, reconstructed batteries, trenches, marked positions, and common graves. The first monuments were erected immediately after the end of the war, and the rest during the following decades. But the most impressive of them all was the Monument of Liberty. The idea to have such monument placed on St. Nicholas Peak, where the battle took place, and a monument that is going to commemorate all the fallen for the freedom of Bulgaria, Bulgarians, and Russians, dates back to 1879, shortly after the end of the war. Public committee was assembled under the name Committee for the Erection of a Monument for the Revival and Liberation of Bulgarians. On August 26, 1922, with a solemn ceremony, the Bulgarian King Boris III placed the foundation stone of the monument. The same year, the committee addressed the entire Bulgarian nation with a call for voluntary donation for the erection of the museum. It was more than 10 years later, however, when on August 26, 1934, the monument was officially inaugurated with even greater festivity in the presence of the veterans, Bulgarian volunteers from the Russo-Turkish War, the king, the ministers, the members of the government, the generals of the army, foreign representatives, and at about 100,000 citizens who climbed that peak to be there on this date. The Monument of Liberty was built partially with voluntary contributions of the entire nation, and it resembled a medieval Bulgarian fortress with 890 steps leading to it. A bronze lion, symbol of the Bulgarian sovereignty, was placed above the central gate. The names of Shipka, Sheinovo, and Stara Zagora were written on the other three sides of the monument. These were the three battlefields that reminded the feet of the Bulgarian volunteers themselves. A marble sarcophagus housing some of the remains of the Russians and Bulgarian casualties of the war was placed on the first floor of the monument. There are 4 other floors where paintings, weapons, flags, and other exhibits are presented. Approximately 100,000 visitors per year go to enjoy this breathtaking view you can see now, but also to commemorate the memory and the feat and the self-sacrifice of those heroes of Shipka who died to see liberated Bulgaria. The last battlefield that I would like to tell you about is from the First World War and is connected with the Battle of Tutrakan that took place on the very same date 102 years ago. After the Second Balkan War in 1913 and the first national catastrophe that followed it for Bulgaria, the entire region of South Dobruja was included within the Romanian kingdom. The Romanian government invested lots of money for the new border strengthening, and in the period 1914-1916, they transformed Tutrakan in one of the most powerful fortresses on the Danube River, which was named by its contemporaries the Little or the Romanian Verdun. Shortly after Romania entered the First World War on the side of the Entente, Bulgaria, being part of the Central Powers and driven by its desire to regain the territories populated by people with Bulgarian national identity, declared war to Romania on September 1st, 1916. Part of 3rd Bulgarian Army, under the general command of Major General Pantelei Kiselov, stood against the mighty Romanian fighting forces and headed towards Tutrakan. The attack began on September 5th, 1916. Despite the furious Romanian defense, the front line that you see fell by the same night. On the following day, the battle continued with the same impetus. At 4:30 p.m., the Romanian garrison surrendered. At 6 p.m., General Kiselov marched through liberated Tutrakan. After this epic battle, the Bulgarian command decided to bury all the Bulgarian, Romanian, Turkish, and German dead soldiers at the place of Fort number 7 of the Romanian fortification line. This was 8 kilometers far from the city of Tutrakan, and it was 8,000 soldiers, of which 1,764 Bulgarians, that found peace in this Tutrakan cemetery. In 1917, the first national celebration of the Battle of Tutrakan was organized. The newly established public committee, September 6th, in Tutrakan, built an ark and a large stone cross of the Order of Bravery in order to honor the fallen heroes. General Kiselov, senior officers from the chief command, and representatives of the command of the Allied forces joined the official ceremony. At the end of the First World War, however, South Dobruja was once again given to Romania, alongside with Tutrakan and the cemetery near it. Nevertheless, the Romanian society did not neglect the memorial, and in 1922, the Romanian organization Code to the Heroes erected a new monument with the inscription, "Honor and glory to those who knew how to die heroically for their homeland." It was written in Bulgarian, German, Romanian, and Turkish. In 1940, according to the Agreement of Craiova, Bulgaria peacefully got back the territory of South Dobruja from Romania. Shortly after that, the committee September 6th was restored and started to raise funds for the expansion of the memorial complex in Tutrakan. On September 5th and 6th, 1941, the mayor of Tutrakan and the Ministry of Defense organized the first national celebration in Tutrakan Dobruja. These impressive celebrations were attended by many live veterans from the battles, and since then it was settled that each year on the first Sunday of September, the warriors would gather and pay their tribute to the casualties of Tutrakan. This tradition continues nowadays. Actually, it would be this Sunday that they are going to gather at Tutrakan military tomb. It was on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Tutrakan when the National State Fund, 13th Centuries Bulgaria, granted a major renovation of the memorial complex, Military Tomb 1916. An alley of glory that you see was built with the names of all the victims of the Tutrakan operation. The gravestones were restored and the central entrance was redesigned. In 2001, a new special layout of the park area was approved with two 105mm Krupp cannons installed to be the guardians of the entrance of the complex. A new chapel, St. George the Victorious, was also officially inaugurated in the spring of 2007. Nowadays, the memorial welcomes daily citizens and relatives of the departed who lay flower wreaths to commemorate the graves and the heroes of Tutrakan. This short review of these three Bulgarian battlefields present the general mechanism by which battlefields are preserved in Bulgaria and transformed into places of national remembrance under the form of various memorial complexes, monuments, museums. Usually, they are erected by the will of public committees on or near to the very places that are ultimately connected with the formation, development, and most often with the defense of our national identity. As the most complex and thorny locations on the cultural historical map, quite often battlefields are burdened by the confrontation between the concepts of the good and authentically just Bulgarians and their vicious, flawed animals. Even today, various political and civil associations exploit these constructions. Back in the past, however, our ancestors from the founding committees of these national memorials have managed to rise above this inherited negativity from the battlefield and to establish institutions that serve not simply as pillars of national identity, but also as a means of reconciliation. And I finish with this slide because I would like once again to remind you the text on it. Honor and glory to those who knew how to die heroically for their homeland, each for its own homeland, in fact, but with respect to the other, an enemy or a friend. And I believe this is the message that battlefield memorials are supposed to send us nowadays, that these places of national remembrance are part of our history and culture, not to divide us, but to unite us in order to protect the peace. Thank you very much.